You're listening to Power Athlete Radio, a podcast dedicated to empowering your performance every damn day. Join former NFL pro and Power Athlete founder John Welborn as he dissects the greatest minds in strength, conditioning, and more. So whether your goal is to be the hammer, destroy mediocrity, or simply move the dirt, you've come to the right place. Now with the warm-up done, let the gains begin.
Yes, Thomas Seeger. He's the PhD at ASU that's doing all the cold plunge research. He's the guy that does the Moroso Forges.
Okay.
Yeah, that's his company. So I had him on the podcast, and I don't have one of those. I should buy one, but I had reservations about spending $10,000 for a unit that sits outside in Texas. And
yeah,
Texas is notoriously bad for fucking destroying everything. Like I put a sauna outside, but I had to build like a cover on it, which involved pouring a concrete platform. And then I did the weld up. So I had to go buy a generator welder, and then I'd learn to stick weld. And so it was probably about a year plus in the making, because of course I can't do anything fast. But the only way I was going to put that sauna up is if I had a cover. And so I was like, man, I don't know about spending $10,000 on a bitchin' cold tub. Like, let me get like a plastic one. So I got the ice barrel one. I've been using it, and he's like over there talking. Right. His unit like makes its own ice. It has like Epsom salts in it, and it's grounded.
Oh crap!
I was like, fuck. So it's funny. I was looking at him last night, and I'm like, maybe he has like a discount. I have a hard time spending as much as I would. I mean, that's double what I'd spend on a piece of shit project car, and just to leave it sitting outside in Texas. So I kind of break everything into like project cars, which used to be $2,000 to $4,000 for a cool project car. Now they're like $4,000 to $6,000. But like, I'm like,
dude, your cars and trucks are so cool. Like I so want to buy one from you. Like your Fall Guy truck, and I definitely want to. I want a Jed Eckert, Red Dawn early truck, and just I want to piss on the radiator,
dude. If you task, God damn it, this is like my addiction, right?
I know, I get it.
If you task me with it, I'm pretty sure we could find one and make a pretty cool one. Was
is it like $50,000 or is it like actual? Probably if I have to pay John Welborn rates to sit there and weld it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it just so happens you have a lot of cool fucking guys, and I think what would be bitching is to go because you guys have like the modeling and the CAD. I mean, I almost feel like I could show up and have Johnny draw everything for us, which would be so fun.
Oh yeah.
Dude, I just
could you imagine if you and Johnny just got to hang out for a couple of weeks and just work on stuff like that directly? How cool that would be.
Yeah, no, he'd be, dude. So my buddy Will is built trophy trucks in Southern California, and now he got hired to go work at a shop up in St. George, Utah, that's kind of building like Riddler, like hot rods, and so he actually got a scanner to like scan vehicles, and now he can like do all this modeling and CAD and all these different things. Like the stuff he does, he sends me, it just like blows my mind. I mean, the fact that like, I'm like an old school kind of what I call CAD, which is cardboard. Like I just do like cardboard templates and then I cut them out.
I still am.
Yeah. They don't do that anymore. All they do now is these guys basically model, they do everything, they build it, and then they take the file, they send it out to this place like cut.com, and they basically laser cut everything. It shows up on a pallet and you just glue it together.
No way. How much does something like one of those scanners cost?
I think they're probably maybe, I don't know, dude, like maybe 10, 15 grand.
So not bad.
No, I mean, like not terrible. I mean, I don't know the cost, but I do know that the scanning is one thing. But like, so for like my my blue truck, the crew cab, I took on that Unreal Adventure, and the truck I designed wasn't the truck that I needed for the adventure. Like we were in Oregon, they had dunes, there was these like fucking Jeep trails, and I'm in a full size. And so I came home and I was like, man, I got to make some changes. So I ended up tweaking the rear end. So I got to cut the back off and do this. And so I basically sent it. And my buddy's like, dude, get me a scan. I'll just design it in this. And then I'll basically send it out and it'll show up. And then all you have to do is just basically assemble it with Legos with a welder.
No way.
And that's how they're doing things these days. Like me sitting there bending one tube at a time and trying to Michelangelo this shit, like that doesn't exist anymore. These guys are so far off. They model suspensions. They can like basically do everything. But
really,
that's for like legit like off-road trophy truck. But like for for a Red Dawn K10 step-side truck, like just bitching Alcans or Devers, like, leaf springs front and rear, crossover steering, axles, and like a badass LS, like that thing would be insane. We're giving away those Wade's Army Blazers.
Ooh.
You know that, right?
Yeah, I think I saw that coming.
Yeah, I'm going to tag you in a video that we're going to put out. We did. I did a 1990. We found an all original 1990. Did a 6.0 6L90 in it, so it's got like a modern drivetrain, 1-ton axles. And then the guy that won the 74 full convertible we gave away a couple years ago, he donated it back. So we're giving away 2 Blazers.
Dude, that is so cool.
Yeah. So
I could get tricked into trying to win that sucker hardcore.
I think you should. And the best part about it is I hope it goes to a friend of mine. So if there's any problems or they ever want to do any upgrades, they know where to bring it. Yeah.
And then we could just go drive it around with a 30-30 and a Colt revolver and protect the homeland.
Well, I mean, the chances of that going down, I don't know, man. I mean, what do you think?
It's just changing the topic slightly. Have you listened or read the newest Jack Carr book, The Cry Havoc?
No.
It's the 8th part of his series, the Terminalist series.
I'm current on all of them. So I think I read the first 2 books, and then I started listening to the audiobooks because when I do my cardio, I need something to listen to.
Yep, exactly.
And I would just listen to those. And the funny part is I do 30 minutes, and I found myself doing like 45, 50, 60 minutes because I just wanted to listen to the book.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I drove back from Rochester 2 days ago, and it's like a 12, 14-hour drive, and I was just driving. I was like, you get to your driveway, you're like, you want to go home and see your kids and stuff. You're like, but I'm like in the last chapter. So you're like hiding in your own driveway. But the newest book, Cry Havoc, it's basically the predecessor to the James Reese. It was his dad, Tom Reese, who was a Mac VSOG guy in Vietnam. And dude, growing up, watching the movies that you and I did, and Jack is basically our same age as well, right? So the 3 of us would just nerd out over all this stuff because it's like everything is First Blood, Red Dawn, Missing in Action,
Uncommon Valor.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And so like basically the whole book is an homage to all of those eras with some of the same phrasing and terminology. It's such like a cathartic, like you listen to it and it's like massaging my little 9-year-old brain.
Dude,
it's amazing.
I own Red Dawn. I mean, I own Red Dawn, but Uncommon Valor to this day is still like my brother and I's favorite movie.
Sailor is one of the best characters of all time.
We interrupt this episode with a shameless self-promotion. Are you a field or court sport athlete looking to dominate the leaderboard? Let me introduce you to Field Strong. Take your inner athlete to the next level by exposing yourself to the advanced training techniques that contributed to my 10 years in the NFL. Unlock pinnacle performance and level up your athletic potential today. Head to powerathletehq.com/fieldstrong and claim your 7-day free trial. Now back to the show.
Dude, one of my greatest moments of glory was going into a bar on a Monday night in Philadelphia. I think I've told you the story, and sitting down with the Plow and the Stars and looking over and hearing the voice and then realizing that it's Tex Cobb sitting next to me. And
that's amazing.
I was like, Sailor! And I proceeded to buy him dinner and drinks and like chew his ear off. I don't know if he was nearly as excited about it as I was. I mean, for the fact that guy boxed Muhammad Ali, like he was a legit boxer and he wanted to talk about football and boxing. And all I wanted to do was like, how cool is Gene Hackman? What about
you
beat him up?
You had a grenade around your neck.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that you beat the shit out of Swayze and he was like, get up, boy. You got a soldier, boy. And then, and then they find
he had a sweet roundhouse kick too.
With a grenade. God.
With a grenade slopping around. I need to watch that one.
Movies like that anymore.
Mm.
It's
what built this country.
Yeah. I mean, so my dad's cousin, Little Bill Bruner is what they called him. They called him Little Bill. He was a surfer in Southern California. He got drafted to Vietnam.
It's like straight Big Wednesday stuff for you.
Yeah. So he goes over there and he goes, dude, they used to. He was one of the frogmen. So like he was like he was a UDT guy. So he was in that kind of like when the Frogmen and the UDT were kind of two separate. He was there at like kind of the meshing of those two.
Sure.
And they used to basically wear black wetsuits and board shorts, and they would paddle out on surfboards and set ordnance on North Vietnamese boats and this different deal. And then they would paddle in, and then he would basically night surf. Which, anybody that's ever seen Apocalypse Now, Charlie
don't surf.
Right? So those stories he used to tell us when we were kids. I mean, I remember we go to family barbecues. He was a terrible alcoholic. He said that was the only thing they did over there was drink. And then he came back.
And heroin.
He stood up the LA Bomb Squad. So he was like came back in a cop, and he was one of the guys that stood up the LA Bomb Squad. Come back from Vietnam, and you basically been planting ordnance as a UDT guy. Jeez. And then, came back for that. But I remember at family deals, he used to drink something called a titty ball, which was a glass of vodka with a splash of milk. So it kind of looked like a milky drink, and we didn't know what he was drinking. And he drank that on ice and pounded those. He ended up dying, but he was a terrible alcoholic. But he would tell us these insane stories where at the time, we were watching these movies, and he would tell us this stuff. And he's like, that was the wildest one. He's like, we had black wetsuits, and we would just paddle out. We'd plant what we had, and then we'd go in and we'd catch waves. And I'm like, did you ever go out and get a couple extra? He's like, a few times. But we had to be sure that it blew up. Oh, these guys were insane. So like that's
insanity.
Yeah, like this was a legit he since passed away, but man, I would have loved to have him on the podcast.
Oh man, how awesome. That's just that stuff. I forgot how interesting the Vietnam era was, because that's what we grew up as. Like that's what Army dudes were. That's what special operations and guys now have the GWAT. Yeah, sure.
I mean, that was John Rambo.
And John Rambo. So basically, that new book is somewhat built upon. I mean, David Morrell wrote First Blood, and that I just reread First Blood on this trip as well, which is. By far, you got to read that one. It's so good. And I mean, you could tell Jack Carr, that's where he got a lot of his influence from. But I just fell in love with that generation of, my dad's generation, our dad's generation, like of that whole world. And, the Vietnam era guys, I mean, that was kind of the stand up of a lot of the special operations forces and just some wild fighting. And I mean, I think the MACV-SOG guys, they said there was a 50% of them were killed, that any guys that had been MACV, and almost 100% had Purple Hearts.
Wow.
So you're talking about, I mean, those guys were going into Laos and Cambodia, like totally off the reservation, being tried as basically as spies if they were caught. Like country was denying they were there. Like, holy crap, that's some hairy stuff. And they were doing it in Tiger Stripe, and jeans and Chuck Taylors, and guns that they customized, and they were just going in there and just living. I was like, holy crap, those dudes were different level. So got to re-listen or reread First Blood when you get a chance too.
Oh yeah, no, I read that book more than once, and obviously saw the movie, and then went back, and it wasn't until I was in college. I think I bought it at a $2 secondhand bookstore.
Right.
I went by and I was like, oh shit, that's a book, and it was I don't believe it was called First Blood originally.
It actually was. It was written in 1971. And so it was written, and they used to actually teach it in high schools. It was a book they would read in high schools and colleges. And then the Vietnam War was not as popular. And then I think it was in '82 they made the movie of it with Stallone, and they kind of passed it around Hollywood for years, and no one wanted to get a piece of it. And all the major actors were like, no, not so much. And then they basically, a different director came in there and made it more of an action movie, and backed off some of John Rambo's killing everyone aspects, and then that actually created the genre of the action figure. So,
like the action figure movie?
No, like the action figure. Like there was no action movies prior to the action figure character of cinema was developed. That was they're crediting John Rambo in First Blood 2 as the first one, or First Blood as the first one.
Oh shit. Yeah, because
prior to that, no one was like an action dude. Like you had Charles Bronson, you had Clint Eastwood, but no one was like a muscly action dude
until Stallone showed up.
Stallone literally created the genre.
One of my favorite parts of that was, do you remember when he's running up the gully and he finds that piece of like canvas, and he puts the canvas on this,
Dude,
and which was awesome. I'm pretty sure everybody's done that themselves. But then
all of us have, yes.
After he kills, like throws the rock, knocks it off, he takes the guy's jacket. He still doesn't wear the jacket. Did you ever notice that? Like we were always like, he has the jacket now. Why is he still wearing the canvas?
Because the canvas is awesome.
Well, yeah, and his arms were out, and he was jacked. And then, of course, when he
and he had a cool scar.
Yeah. So we were like, God, well, he's got to be cold. He's wearing the jacket. So yeah, he ended up not wearing that jacket. But I mean, there was interesting time in this country because of that social divide. I mean,
Sure.
You have, like the, what they call like the eroding of trust, pretty fascinating. You think about like Richard Nixon and Watergate, which now here we know many, many years later that Richard Nixon was set up and was framed and basically put into a position because they were nervous about Nixon's power. He was by far the most popular president in U.S. history, got more votes. I mean, it was insane. It was like 225-14. He wins the Electoral College. I mean, like the most decisive victory in U.S. history for a president. My dad, who since obviously passed away, but I remember my dad worked on Nixon's campaign.
No way.
Yeah. So my dad was in politics, California politics, and he got an opportunity to go to like a dinner, like kind of a meeting with Nixon. And to this day, he still, he's since passed away, but he said at that point, he had known Ronald Reagan and, different political people, but he's like, Richard Nixon was by far at that point the smartest person he'd ever sat in a room with.
Really?
And so when I asked my dad about Watergate, he goes, Watergate was an interesting time, obviously, but he goes, Nixon was framed. This is also interesting. So I went to Berkeley, obviously, which we.
Gosh, that whole era is just so shrouded in. So it makes you rethink everything that happened from like 52 to yesterday.
Well, so I lived in the dorms, and one of the girls that lived in the dorms with us was Bob Woodward's daughter. So Woodward and Bernstein. All the president's men. So Bob Woodward came and spoke about that. And what was fascinating about Bob Woodward, he was a naval intelligence officer. At 27, he gets out and goes to work for, the New York Times the Washington Post. So he goes to work for the Washington Post. He gets given this story.
Yep. Because that was like his breakout story, right?
He was 27 years old. And his confidential informant was like the number 2 guy in the FBI.
Yeah.
So I mean, the guy's a naval intelligence officer. I mean, like, dude, it was a complete smear job on them. I mean, and like even when he got up and was like speaking about like it, you're like, this sounds, wait, you're 27 years old, you're a naval intelligence officer, you have no experience as a reporter, and you get handed the biggest story in U.S. history to take down the most popular president, and your confidential informant's the number 2 guy at the FBI. You are by a government plant. Like, this is a complete disinformation campaign that you are leading. And then he goes and writes all the president's men, and they do this whole thing. But I'm like, how come nobody ever called this guy for basically being deep state? And this was a smear job on Nixon.
Do you think people just were so trusting back then and believe everything on the news, or they just didn't even think the deep state or whatever you might want to call it was a real thing, or were they just uneducated, or they just didn't care, they were too high, or like, what's the deal?
No, I think what happened was there was up until, you think about like there was, and my dad and I talked about this. He said there was like an age of innocence, right? So you have like, the greatest generation, the quiet generation, and then all of a sudden you get into like the boomers, and there was this like kind of like whole thing, and then all of a sudden like the Vietnam War starts. And then all of a sudden Nixon, and there's this like loss of innocence, and there became this like, don't trust anybody over 30. And it just became this kind of mistrusting of the government, because now all of a sudden people are getting lied to. Why are we in Vietnam? Like, why are we sending our boys over to fight this little proxy war in like the middle of Southeast Asia? And the idea is we have to stop communism. And I think people just became disenfranchised, just mistrusting of the government. The other issue is that the only way that you were going to get information was obviously through, let's say, news source, which we know is
main channel news, right?
Yeah, or you had to read the paper. So my dad still to the day he died, got up every Sunday morning and read the LA Times cover to cover. And then we would sit there at night and he would tell us all the bullshit that was in there. And as a guy who was a criminal defense attorney for 55 years in LA, I mean, he talks about, when he was a probation officer, he knew Mookie Williams, who was the guy that started the Crips. And he was there at the middle. I mean, I remember him telling the story about the day that crack cocaine hit the streets in LA. He said that they were, California was at a point where there were so few people in jail, they were thinking of shutting down jails and basically going to different, like a different model. All of a sudden crack cocaine hits and he goes, things were pretty mellow. And then all of a sudden overnight, there was just like a black cloud that fell over. And he goes, he went in and there was 100 murders. And he goes, it was as if that moment, and then Richard Nixon, the war on drugs, and these all of these cascading things. And he's like, dude, and he goes, it turned into a war zone, and next thing you know, the prisons are exploding. And his joke was, I've never seen any black dude from LA go to Colombia and get cocaine, so I wonder where it came from. Which now we know cocaine cowboys, the CIA.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's I think the issue comes down to the information was extremely curated for forever. Yeah. You think about Operation Paperclip. I mean, we basically brought Nazi scientists. I mean, you look at Operation Mockingbird, where they were going in and basically controlling the media sources. And, I think the media that we were seeing on TV, the stuff in the newspapers was all curated in such a way. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden you go to places like, Berkeley or different places that, maybe been these little epicenters of information. And there's, equal people on other sides that are probably posting bullshit. But now we're in a situation where everything is available. I mean, you think about somebody does a FOIA request, it goes in, it goes up. I mean, the fact that we were watching live streams of the Ukrainians fighting the Russians and these guys were basically Instagram living it and you're seeing rockets hit. I mean, think about the level of access we've had. We've never had this level of access.
Sure. But you also have an extreme level of ability to be subverted as well, right? Yeah. Now that you have all this, not only Photoshop, but you have all these other AI ways of changing videos and doing all is it an age of more information or of course more information, but what is the age of accuracy of information? Are we there? And can you even tell anymore? Right.
No. So I think, I learned a few things from Greg Glassman from CrossFit. Mm-hmm. He used a line one time that I have co-opted and I use all the time that people fall or fail at the margins of their experience. So we just had the Power Athlete Collective, which I appreciate your guys' continued sponsorship. I'm always glad to have you guys there. And we ended up having John McPhee come out and he taught a shooting course for us, which was awesome. McPhee's a fucking rad dude. Probably one of the best human beings I've ever met. And the fact that he got, a hit job taken on him by a bunch of bro ex-military podcasters that wanted to try to get clicks. So they fabricated a bunch of bullshit on him is a travesty. So we go out and shoot and, I'm like you, dude, I hunt almost every single night in my backyard. So I'm behind a scope or a rifle, either shooting something or at least scanning.
Sure.
I carry concealed, so I dry fire almost, 4 or 5 days a week. I hit the range every, once a month I stop, I shoot all my duty loads and then I buy new duty loads. So I'm pretty proficient. I roll.
I would say you're in the 1% of people. Yes. You're in it.
I have what I call operational readiness, right? So, obviously, I carry a go bag. I got a kit, the whole thing, right? And I carry guns, so you have to be proficient. So we went out to go shoot, and it was pretty interesting, seeing guys shoot and realizing that certain people, they just don't shoot as much. And I remember, some people were blaming it on the gun. They were, technique or this and this. And my joke is, it's a bad carpenter that blames his tools. So don't be upset. You're not getting the results you want because you haven't invested the time. And this happens with welding. This happens with fighting, with jits, with all these other things.
Weightlifting, with any skill.
Weightlifting, with hunting.
We always call it it's the Indian, not the arrow.
It's the loose nut behind the wheel.
Yeah,
and that level of operational readiness. And I think what we're seeing today. And I wrote a paper about this years ago when I was in college, that I felt that the division, and this was when I was doing my master's work, I always felt that the division of education and intelligence had to do with access to information. And I think what it came back to was they did basic intelligence testing, and I think the Army did it, and they found that the black people that were going into the Army had like lower intelligence scores, I think, than like white by a few points. And so they were asking us for observations, and I felt that it was access to information, that like, if they had been given the same access to information, this wouldn't be an issue. Now we have incredible access to information where the entirety of the world is basically in this fucking thing, and it's all at my fingertips. And I feel like people have never been dumber. So I think early on, what they did is that they curated information out of fear that people would become too educated and the ruse would be up. And then they realized if you just give them all the information, most people will not be able to disseminate it because it's too overwhelming.
Yes.
So then what they'll do is they'll just look to trusted people, and then we can just find who those key figures are and then use them as controlled opposition.
1,000%.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. That I've seen the exact same thing. It's so much information that you could let everyone drink from a fire hose to the point where they can't take anymore, and they're going to go, I'm going to listen to the 2 or 3 people or 10 people or whatever that is most aligned with. Maybe they're the prettiest, maybe they're the coolest, maybe they're the most popular, and then all you have to do is have inception strategies with those people, and they become your direct channel to that demographic.
Well, like for example, I think this. I wrote an article on my Talk to Me, Johnny, which was about the Charlie Kirk assassination.
Which I always love the reference to First Blood with that. For those who don't know.
Well, if you notice that the tagline is "It's a Long Road," which is the theme song. Oh, it's a long road.
Oh man!
So
I didn't catch that. Good job,
Rob. It was actually Rob Wolf when I had to Talk to Me, Johnny, and I said it's a long road. He's like, this wouldn't happen to do with the song in First Blood, would it? And I'm like, that's exactly what it is. Just like for the. I wrote that blog years ago. It's called The 42 Things I Learned up until this point. And the reason I used 42 was the magic number of existence in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is 42.
I love that.
And so Rob was the only one I had him on the podcast, and he's like, did anybody ever pick up that 42 thing was a 42? Because he had a 42. I'm like, yeah, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. We read that book as kids. That's like that's a magical number. But right. To go back to Greg Glassman, right?
Side note, real quick. So you know why they chose John Rambo as the name for the character? So Rambo was David Morrell got like a piece of bread or something the day before at the grocery store, and it was Rambeaux. And so he was saying like Rambo, like he was pronouncing a certain way, and his wife came home and said, "Oh, Rambo," and he was like, "Oh, that's a cool sounding name." And then John, as in Johnny Goes Off to War, that was kind of that side of it. And then Sam Troutman was Uncle Sam.
Oh,
because in the book, Sam Troutman didn't actually train John Rambo. He was above the whole group that trained John Rambo. So he was like one click, away from that. So it was all this, it was very, very cool. And then is it Teasman? What was the antagonist, the sheriff?
Well, in the movie, it was, I thought it was Teasdale.
Teasel or Tisdale, something like that. Well, in the book, he was actually he was a Silver Star decorated from the Korean War. The only higher award was the Congressional Medal of Honor that John Rambo got. So there was this big, so when you read the book, you see like this big age scenario, and it was like the clean cut guy with a buzz cut that's a sheriff against the long haired guy that has the PTSD. So it's just a side note. I thought that was a really cool, interesting way that they chose the names themselves. So,
So Glassman talked about failed to margins of experience, right? So like if you want to decrease your chance at failure, you just have to push out your margin as far as you can go. So I think that the same thing applies with a lot of this. Like, and then the other piece that Greg said is he goes, if you approach everything as bullshit and then work backwards, you usually are in a better place than believing everything and then getting told that it's bullshit. My wife gets pissed at me at this. She's like, why do you think everything's bullshit? I'm like, because I put a natural filter of like everything is untrue until it proves itself to be true. And like like a class example, right? Like you have a guy like Trump comes in who kind of like campaigns on this anti-establishment platform, right? Like I'm not from DC, I'm a businessman, and here we're going to drain the swamp in the deep state. And then all of a sudden, like the Epstein stuff comes out, and they were like, that just fucking went away. And I'm like, dude, you campaigned for years on this. Like, how do you like just make it go away? And his base is like, okay, I guess it just goes away. For me, I look at that and be like, all right, how do you campaign on this? Is because the news cycle is so fast that people can't keep up. But I think that there has to be some form of accountability for these different things. And the problem is most people just don't have the bandwidth for it. If you approach everything with a bit of skepticism and you allow that skepticism to play you into a positive place, it works better than having a bunch of high hopes and then just getting, cut out. And like we were referencing Trump, that, his son, everything about draining the swamp, and we're going to release the Epstein files, and all this comes out. And then all of a sudden he's like, we looked at them and they were nothing. I mean, they literally built their entire campaign on that. Yeah. And what's wild is that kind of eroded a lot of it for me, where I was like, okay, this thing is a lot more powerful. Now, whether or not, Trump got, the assassination, who knows? Maybe they shot him in the ear. Maybe he turns his head. Who knows how that whole thing goes down?
Because you were talking about the Charlie Kirk thing before you went out.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so the Charlie Kirk thing to me was really ugly. For the fact that
I left the internet after that for a while.
Regardless of how you feel about what he said, the fact that guy went to college campuses and engaged people in discourse. Now, was he extremely polished and well and had excellent arguments, and was he one of the best in the world at it? 100%. Were these kids completely unprepared for what he was going to do? 100%. But he still went out and argued and battled and taught. I mean, this is what he did.
And gave people a microphone themselves.
Yeah, and listened to them, and was never dismissive of them. Like, hey, these are my ideas. We're going to have discord, which is, what you hope for in this country. He was a father. He had children, and he went out and was trying to engage the youth to be able to figure out, have these discussions. The fact that he gets killed is awful. And the fact that people were celebrating it and were this ugly and gross, was beyond me, that people were okay. So now all of a sudden, because the words that this individual was discussing were different than the ones that you want, then therefore that gives you the ability to celebrate the death of a father, an American, a husband. I mean, a guy in his 30s who was running a business. I mean, engaging. It's not like he was sitting behind a computer doing nefarious stuff. The dude was literally sitting front and center on a stool debating these kids, and did so. And I have never been so disgusted by the internet and people, to the point where I was like, dude, if the internet turned off, we'd be better for it, because this is really ugly.
100%, John. I was actually driving to a mule deer camp when I got the text, and I stopped to take a leak in a gas station, and it was on the news, and I was like, what the heck? And then friend sent the video. Unfortunately, I watched it. And I remember I got to camp and I started seeing what people were saying, and I got so frustrated and angry that people would be so insensitive or so, low class is a pretty very, just all the above. And I left. I didn't go on the internet or social media for probably 2 weeks. I just left, and you know what? It was fantastic. Strangely enough, I had just gotten the analog, the book of Richard Ryan wrote. Have you read that one yet? The Warrior's Garden.
Oh, yes, yeah. He sent it to me in this big.
Yeah. I thought he had. Yeah. So I hadn't had a chance to read it. So I literally sat in the woods and read that book for a day or two, and then, which was exactly about doing that. I saw every sunset, every sunrise. The only person I talked to was a few people at work and people in hunt camp. And it was awesome. And 2 days into it, I was happy again. I had perspective. I had no idea what was going on. I came back to the world, and everyone was like, hey, did you see that? I was like, no, didn't see any of it. I have no idea what's going on in the world. And I realized that that's okay. And unfortunately, I've gotten sucked back into the vortex of everything. But, one of my favorite lines from John Prine is, and I look at, and he wrote the line in 1970. It says, blow up your TV, throw away your paper, move to the country, and build you a home, plant a little garden, eat a lot of peaches, trying to find Jesus on your own. I'm like, man, that guy had it figured out in 1970. And it's never, in my opinion, been more evident when we saw the case study of the vitriol horribleness of people back and forth, both sides,
Yeah.
of that experience. And it was like, if this whole thing, like you said, if the internet just blows up today, I'm totally good with it. I'll go back to 1995 and that long.
Yeah, it just I was like, I think what I called it. Hold on, let me pull up the actual. I forgot because I actually had a pretty good. If you guys go to talktomejohnny.com, I have it called "When Words Become Weapons."
Yeah,
and it was like the note I put. It isn't about politics. It's about what happens when dialogue dies. I spent my life in locker rooms, weight rooms, and training rooms where you can speak your mind, argue hard, and still shake hands after. Mm-hmm. That's how men sharpen one another through honesty and not hostility. The old adage says, "Iron sharpens iron as one man sharpens another," which is a quote to the Bible, even though I've co-opted it. Mm-hmm. But somewhere along the way, that disappeared when disagreement became heresy and emotion replaced reason. The foundation for a free society started to crack. We've confused fragility for virtue, outrage for courage, and comfort for truth. And the result isn't progress; it's paralysis. And I call it the death of dialogue. And
you're a wordsmith, John. It helps that you're really smart, but that was a very, very eloquent way of doing that.
I worked on this one, and and I actually said, I was like, I haven't commented on Charlie Kirk assassination because I'm struggling with what I've seen, where thousands of people celebrating the death of a man who dared to speak his truth, what he believed in, daring to engage college kids in open discussion. In the true spirit of Socrates, who was condemned for corrupting the youth by teaching them to think, he engaged the youth in spirited discourse, right? And his death marks how far we've fallen, that now people view his rhetoric as so inflammatory that he needs to be killed.
It's amazing.
Well, the other thing which is wild is a 30-06 at 200 yards. Mm-hmm. And I know you hunt with a 30-06 and I've killed things with a 30-06. That's a big bullet.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And shoot him in the neck. Obviously, nobody shoots anybody in the neck. You either shoot in the chest or the head. Right. Neck's kind of a no man's. So, was it a bad shot?
It's not what you would generally go for.
Yeah. You and for the most part, you don't even aim at the head.
Center mass would be the option. Yeah. I had this conversation with Michael Waddell at elk camp the next week, and we were, both of us shot a lot of stuff, a lot of 30-06, and we were discussing was the rifle sighted in for 100 and it dropped, which is a bit more of the drop than it would have at 200 yards, or was it sighted in, was his dad's or granddad's hunting rifle sighted in for 300 because he was an elk hunter out there, which would put it about 5 inches high at 100 or at 200. And so you're like, okay, was it aimed here? Again, I don't want to get into the gruesome details of that, but you start looking at weaponized math and ballistics, or was the guy just a bad shot or was he strangely very accurate and decided that shot placement? Or is it the multiple conspiracy theories that and so part of it, I just kind of went to all of it and said, you know what? Yeah. Unfortunately, he's dead. And unfortunately, we've seen people, how they feel about the killing of an innocent person. And I just really don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah, it's gross. It's ugly. It's gross. And I think we are worse as a country for seeing behind the veil of individuals. I wrote that article and I posted it on our Power Athlete private Discord, and it was pretty interesting. It got super inflammatory really quick. And
I'd be interested to hear how that shook. Not to dive down that hole. And again, I don't want anyone to be killed. Besides really, really bad people that truly hurt people. I have a hard time to pack myself on in any group that wants to see someone assassinated. That's just a hard pill for me to swallow.
Well, you shouldn't be killed for words, right? And I think on this, right? We grew up in a different time, which was, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Mm-hmm. And this was, there was a great book called Coddling the American Mind, where all of a sudden this
great book, yeah.
Now words cause stress, damages me. So now words are weapons, and because you're going to hurt me because these words are so stressful to me.
Yeah. So weights cause stress too. And they make you to be strong. The stressors, we're in the business of stressors, guys.
Yeah.
But sorry.
Well, but that was, inflammatory rhetoric. The things that people would say, liberty is standing on a box, 1 inch from somebody screaming at the top of your lungs something in opposition, that they would stand on a box, scream for the rest of their lives in opposition of you. I mean, that's what this country was built upon. And now you get into a situation where this guy gets killed. I mean, and then the conspiracy theory is was this a message to a guy like Trump being like, hey man, we can, because if you think Charlie Kirk at the rate he was going, if he doesn't get taken off the board, probably has an opportunity to be a president in about another 10 years. I mean, what is he, 33?
No, I don't disagree.
Or early 40s to be president. I mean, that individual had so much bandwidth and was such a skilled orator and argument. I mean, the skilled rhetorician, that individual puts himself into a situation. So to basically take him off the board, you start removing, future leaders of this country, and whether or not whatever side you sit on, we are a worse nation for it.
Correct. Yeah. Not letting letting it all shake out and come out in the wash, as they say.
Yeah. So, how did we get here? I think the government, and, when I say the government, are you talking about the government employees of this? I mean, there's a lot of things that happened in this country that our founding fathers stood against that we've since walked back on, taking us off the gold standard. I mean, they felt that we should never have a standing army. There should never be a centralized bank. And then you look around, we got a Federal Reserve that's not a federal or a reserve. I mean, privately owned bank that controls our money. I mean, you look at that
That's
Federal
a conspiracy
Reserve.
theory, John.
No, it's not a conspiracy theory. There's
joking.
a great book about it. I mean,
I'm joking.
I know you know this,
Yeah.
but you look at all of these different pieces of this. I mean, there's a reason that, the U.S. government is by far the largest employer in this country into the nanny state. I mean, there's just a lot of pieces in this that they've been building. And when I say they, I don't know who they is. It's individuals that have a vested interest in the manipulation of this thing. Mm-hmm. And I think for people like us, and I'll say people like us because you're like me, you want to you pay your protection money to the IRS so they leave you alone so you can live your life and enjoy life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness and raise your children and, live a good life unabated by this stuff. And I think what's amazing is that we've been so co-opted and people are so inflammatory that no longer is there any intelligent discourse, no longer is there intelligent conversation. Can you sit and have an argument, or not even an argument, just some conversation with somebody that's a different political view than you, or
a candid and curious conversation with someone that doesn't necessarily come from the same background. That's the hardest part. Candid, as in I actually will tell you what I think, and curious is I actually care what you think, and you don't get that anymore. And I think Pat Ivey was talking about. So he and I have these conversations as well. Like, how do you solve this? How do you solve some of these divisive issues and divisive cultures? And his thought is proximity. It's like, get beside them, invite that person into your life, go into their life, understand what their experience is. And then you could start having a conversation. He and I have been talking about this for years and years. And, in some ways that's exactly what Charlie was doing. He was getting proximity. He was getting right there with people and giving them a voice. And unfortunately, maybe it's too effective, and he had to be silenced, unfortunately.
Well, what I'm worried about, and I actually wrote that in the piece, is now it's created a power vacuum. And that vacuum is going to be filled by the worst individuals who are going to have extremely negative, not the direction this country needs to go. And that's what's happening. You see that echo chamber getting filled. You think that vacuum is getting filled, and it's going to get filled by fucking bad people. And it's a sad deal. So
we all love squats.
Well, no, I was gonna ask a little bit about how the hunting is going this year. I mean, you are by far one of the coolest individuals that I've ever come across in terms of not only your dedication to physical preparation and raising your physical readiness, your just operational readiness in terms of hunting and this and everything. This is you've gone deep. This is not only your hobby, but it's your passion. I mean, obviously lifting weights is, but in terms of hunting, you go take some amazing big game. And every time I get to see the pictures, I'm sad when you get off social, because unfortunately that's where I get to see all the cool shit. But if you looked at my feed, it's kind of funny. It's basically trucks and it's hunting. And when I'm around the Brazilians a lot, it's usually a lot of jiu-jitsu and big-butted Brazilian girls. So I got a really cool, dope thing of trucks, guns, big butted Brazilian girls, usually steaks, and then jujitsu. So
isn't it so interesting that the algorithm figures us out? Because I'm hunting. It's usually some kind of like all those, and who knows who actually constructs these videos. It's like all the weird mechanicals to how stuff works. Like when a guy with like a DeWalt drill could like build a spaceship. It's or those ones, the guys that dig a hole and then like creates this shelter that looks like a rock. And I'll watch the whole thing. And I mean, those like mechanical things are just, again, massaging to my brain. Knives, cooking outside over fires. And then like some of the people that do some like the homeschool parenting things and how to lead in that way. And then of course, strength stuff. But then if you looked at my camera and my phone, that's basically my entire 45 zillion pictures are either trail timer pictures, animals, my kids, my wife, and weight rooms. Like that's about it. Like that's 98% of all my pictures.
You guys build the Taj Mahal of college and professional weight rooms.
Thank you.
I find myself on YouTube. I watch all the time the Alone in the Wilderness, the deal with like Richard Pronecki.
Oh,
where
I had the VHS from Pronecki.
Dude, so he filmed. He goes in the Alaskan wilderness for 30 years and films in like 8mm. Which is like the coolest thing ever. Dude. And then and then does the documentary. I mean, does the what is it? Like the narration.
It's amazing. I found that like 20 years ago, and I would lay on the couch and just watch for hours, just like massaging.
My mouth is like I am like might be the most impressive human being I've ever come across.
Yes.
For the fact that like one, he never seemed to have a bad day.
Yep. Wasn't in a hurry.
Wasn't in a hurry. And his ability to tackle extremely large projects in like insane amount of time where he's like, I'm going to build this cabin and this, and he's like super positive, never a bad day. And I'm like, the only thing I'm thinking is like, there's one thing missing from this whole thing is women. Could it be the fact that like, he didn't have to manage women?
Well, I think that certainly narrows his focus. If you have one of those big butt Brazilians with the cabin would be a piece of shit.
Well, that seems like a lot of fucking drama to me. Those girls seem feisty. But maybe he's like, maybe he figured it out. He's like, you know what? I got like, I can hunt, I can live, I can fish, and I get to build shit, and I got nobody asking me where I'm going to go to dinner, what time I'm going to be home.
When do you think you're going to be home?
Yeah. How long is this going to take? How long am I going to have to sleep out? It's always these questions. I dealt with it this morning. Like, we had a dude come who they do our wildlife kind of like every probably 6 months they come and they kind of do like because we have wildlife exemption.
Oh, cool.
So we have to hire.
Your place is awesome, by the way, man. I need to come see you again down there.
Yeah, we just had our at the collective we had GoRuck, who was an incredible sponsor, sent us about 20 grand worth of shit. Like they sent us these dope backpacks. They sent us all these insane sandbags. So we did kind of like a Go Ruck challenge around the creek. So I went out and looked at it, and it was kind of like, oh, it's a little treacherous. So I got out my mulcher, and I basically kind of like mulched everything. And we've been still,
Did you get cedar poisoning again?
No. I did that once. I'm smart enough to not go do that again. But I've also knocked down enough. But the issue comes down to in Texas, there's a time to work, which is when the weather is cool. And the problem was once it got hot, the rain stopped. And so because the rain stopped, the sparks, it's just like it doesn't make sense. Yeah, so I had to kind of stop for 4 or 5 months, and the place just exploded again. So I felt like all the progress I made, I got to go back and beat the shit out of it. So. But yeah, we did this like bitch and loop, and it was a lot of fun. But yeah, so when we were, long story short, the guy came out the other day to do kind of an evaluation for our wildlife deal, and he's like, "Hey, you got some hog traps or hog prints?" I'm like, "Where?" I was just all over that creek and I didn't see him. So he sent me a picture, and I haven't been down, but after I get done with this, I'm going to go look. And they didn't trip my cam, so I don't know where they're coming. So I'm going to drag the hog trap over and see if I can trap some.
Dude, hogs are way smarter than people think. Especially a big boar is every bit as smart as a big buck. They get stuff figured out, especially if they've been trapped or around traps. They're not dumb by any means. Everyone thinks they're just a big pig. No, they're pretty sharp.
Well, what's kind of wild is the big bucks live up the road from us. They live about 3 miles up the road because my buddy lives up there, and he sends me pictures of them lounging on his lawn.
Yeah, you're like, oh, that's where they are.
Yeah, so I know where they live because all the does live on my property.
Right. Well,
because he never sees a doe, and so he only sees bucks.
So they're bedded up there like a big bachelor group.
Yeah, and then all the does live on my property because there's more because I have water. 24 or so 365.
When is your rut there? Is that a December rut?
No, it already. The rut. Well, so hunting season opens. What is it on Saturday? So November 1.
Okay.
But the issue becomes because we didn't get any rain. Like we didn't get rain for like 4 or 5 months. It was so dry, and I just haven't seen. Like we just haven't seen any of what we normally see.
Yeah. Like
normally, like this time of year, it's usually like in early October. Like probably 2 weeks before hunting season, I will see some incredible bucks that'll show up, and I'm always like, "Oh shit!" And I know I'm not going to see them on hunting they just all disappear. I call them ghost bucks.
Yep.
And I haven't seen a decent buck. I've only seen some small kind of little antlered bucks.
Okay.
And I was a little bummed, but I've been seeing does, and then. Last year when I saw the pregnant mamas, I saw the babies and we kind of track them on the cams and this, and I've seen about half of the babies that I saw, when they were born. So I think they lost
and you could actually reverse. I want to say it's 200 or 202 days of gestation period. So when you're seeing those fawns drop, if you see one pregnant, especially on the feeder, and then you see her the next day or a couple, whatever, you can start figuring it back when they're bred, and that'll give you a pretty good idea when your rut's going to be there. So if you're holding the does, like as long as you could just feed them or get something there ripping and holding those does, because the bucks will be off, and that's kind of how my farm in Missouri is. They're like during the summer, the cameras would tell you there's not a deer. I mean, it's like 5 cameras and a few hundred acres, and you'll get like 1 deer every 5 days, and you're like, this place sucks. And then right now, I think that all the deer in general start pulling off all of the ag fields and everything like that, and they start coming to the woods, and it's 5, 6, 7, 8 buck pictures a day, and they just get bigger and bigger and bigger into mid-November. So it's different properties are set up differently, and then I kind of feel I'm happy because when I'm hunting there, that's actually a really good buck property. But what about the guys who've been watching these hammers all summer and they're like, oh, here we go. And then they just vanish, like poof, they're gone, So if in my opinion, where you have the does, like that's the spot you want to be, but you just got to make sure you're hitting that rut and making sure the does have the cover, the water, and the food where they want to be there. And they're going to try to hide from the bucks there. And then the bucks are going to run them ragged over your spot.
Yep. Yeah, no, we usually count, like this is wild too. Normally I always have about 10 big mamas, like older mamas, and they kind of this, and we kind of chart them over the years. And even though they do get knocked down, whatnot, but this year it feels very, very light. And the reason being is that it was just so dry.
Yep.
And the only place that has water is my place. So that's where, but I just haven't seen them, and I know exactly the trail they come.
Yeah.
So they basically come this way, they jump over, and they come through our west pasture. And I walked back there the other day, and the problem, though, is that now there's a development there. So, and now there's construction in this, and so I think the construction is messing them up. But my wife is asking me, she's like, have you seen any bucks or anything? And I'm like, just some little ones. And so,
do you plant anything there? Do you plant food or anything?
No, we don't do food plots, but I basically feed them corn and protein all year round.
Yeah. So if you can plant something and irrigate it, it's amazing. You'll pull every deer from the area. A friend of mine in Colorado does that. So he has these 2 acres of alfalfa at the base of a hill, basically a mountain range, and when it's super dry. I mean, he pumps water to it, and he's like, I'll get every buck within miles here, and so it's a really interesting way because, they need water and they need good green. And if everything's dry like you have, it's going to cost you some money in water, but that might be something to even look at. It might take you a little bit of infrastructure to do it.
Well, we have a rainwater collection. So what I would so we could light up. I just didn't light it up this year, mainly because in years past when it was super dry.
Yeah.
If you looked at any of the Google images, my property's completely green and everybody else is really dark.
Good for you.
And I was like, yeah. So
that's not a bad deal. It's a strategic placement.
Yeah. Well, if this, I got a few projects to bang out, which I'm pretty excited to. So now that the collective is done and everything else is kind of ramping up a little bit,
No,
but
that's awesome.
or like ramping down. But so what? Give me a rundown on where you've been thus far and some of the things that you've taken.
Well, I went to Colorado. That was my first hunt of the year, Colorado for mule deer, and got one there. That was like right around the whole September 10th, 11th, and so I was able to be off grid, and that was awesome. Saw a bunch of great bucks, got a good one, shot with my bow, and so that was super fun. I drove straight from there to Utah for elk camp with a bunch of buds up that way, and passed up. I mean, it's one of the best elk hunting spots in the world, but I'd kind of put my sights on, I wanted a 330 inch or bigger bull, like a big bull, and passed up a ton of the 310, 315s, even 320 bulls, which are, for those like 300 inch bulls, pretty strong. But probably shouldn't have passed up those 320s at 18 yards, but when you're deciding to go for it, whatever. And the second to last day, I had an absolute tank of a bull. He had triple main beams. So he had one main, two, like a normal 6x, and then he had another main coming off. And it was 400-inch bull, like an absolute grinder of a bull. And I saw him from about 700 yards out in a wallow just throwing mud, and it was like, I looked at my guide. He was like, run, go. He's like, get close to that bull. And I was just trucking, it's 8,000 feet elevation and you're running in there. So this bull had this like really growly, like a lot of those bulls have that, and some of them had like a raspy, but this one sounded like a bull, like a cow, like this weird. So you could pick him out. And so he works into this thicket, and so I work in after him trying to track him through this thicket. So it's kind of like you're walking through this thicket, you have no idea. And every time he would rip off that bugle, it would like shake the thicket. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm on top of this dude, like, but it was so thick, I couldn't see him. And so I'm just creeping along super quiet, like knowing that a bull of a lifetime could be super close. And every time he would rip off, so it was like super fun and hair raising. And there was a big hill, and when he was ripping at me, I couldn't see him on the hill, so I knew he had to still be in the thicket. And the hill was like 80 yards away, so I know I was within 80 of him, which is too far for a shot, especially in the thick. But at 50 in that thick, if I had a window, I would have taken that shot. But that's when what I've found from that style of hunting, the spot and stalk style, why I get so addicted to it, because it's makes you so present. There was nothing else on earth that I thought about when I was, trying to catch my breath, and your heart is just pounding, not only because of the altitude and the exercise, but just like you're hunting a dinosaur, and you're slipping through there, and you have this little bow in your hand, and this thing is ripping off these Godzilla-like bugles, and it's like anytime you might catch a tine or a whatever, and you might be right on top of him. So it was just ultimate focus for about 20 minutes, and then anyway, he ended up slipping away from me. That was the second day, and then I came back to camp, and I mentioned that bull, and everyone at camp kind of turned, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, you saw that bull?" And this is 250,000 acres, and they're like, "You're the closest." What's that?
Where was the property?
In Utah, just east of Salt Lake. So right on the Wyoming border. Okay. And so everyone was kind of like, "Oh my gosh, you saw that bull?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I was 80." They're like, I don't believe anyone's been that close to him. We've been hunting him for a few years and had some guys going after him. So, I kind of blundered into it, but still it's like one of those, everything is really, really cool until you see something that special out there, and then it just raises the ceiling of what is possible. And you're like, "Oh, they make those. Okay, that's a thing." So the next day, of course, we were out, and of course you don't see him the second day. And then I had about a 350 bull come in at 67 yards chasing a cow. We called her in. The cow kind of made where the guides were, that she paused, he stopped at 67 yards, which is kind of where I shoot all the time. And I would have definitely gone for the shot, but he was quartering a little bit to me, just enough. And it's, at 30 yards, you could slip it behind that shoulder with the arrow. But for those bow hunters that know, if he's quartering to a little bit, that shoulder blade is covering up at least half of his vitals. And I didn't want to make a bad shot and wound a bull like that. You know, you're 3 inches forward, you hit that shoulder, it get 2 inches of penetration, and you just wound a bull for no reason. You hit 2 or 3 inches back, you catch one lung and the stomach, and then he runs off, maybe dies a week later. That's not what I want either. So I passed on a bomber of a bull. That was the last day. Probably should, and I had another 320 bull come in and probably should have killed him. But anyway, so I walked away from Utah eating tag soup. But, I feel good about the situation. You kind of look at yourself and you're like, oh my gosh, I hunted for a week and saw this amazing stuff. But then I walk away and said, well, I shared camp with some amazing people. I saw every sunset and sunrise for almost 2 weeks. I walked, 8 to 10 miles a day in the mountains, the most beautiful mountains. I left the world behind besides FaceTime with my wife every day. I'm good with this. I'm totally good with this. And by the last day, I'll be honest, I didn't want to come back. I was like, what do I have to do this every day of my life? What do I have to do to make this what I do? Because this is wildly addictive. And, your body's breaking down because you're just working so hard every day at altitude. And so there's like this physical decrease. You're starting to get an accommodation to it. But like that last day, you're like, if I don't die today, I'm probably going to be fine tomorrow. And then I could probably do this for like a few more months. Oh man. I'm driving to the airport, like kind of depressed of coming home. Cause I'm like, oh, that's living. That's where I want to be, like in here. And for me, that style of hunting is so, you're so present. It reminded me of lifting really, really heavy weights that want to kill you, because when they're, we've joked about it before, like 300 on your back, if you're strong, is just kind of sucks because it's not heavy enough to be fun and it's heavy enough to be heavy. But 500 or 600 is like, oh, I kind of want to kill. It wants to kill you. So now you got to fight, right? Like it's kind of like probably football practice versus a game. You want to play in the playoff game. Practice, it's still hard. And so I've found that besides,
it actually is there's a different level of consciousness in the brain, and actually,
it's like a flow state, right?
Who is it? I'm totally forgetting. Thomas. And I'm going to totally. I'm totally going to. Dr. Kramer and my buddy Tom is like they wrote a book, and in there they talk about percentage of 1RM activates like different parts of the cortex.
Yes.
And the only way that you're able to activate that like top level of cortex is to get under a weight that is so heavy that it like basically rewires into your survival instinct. Like if I don't 100%. Squat this, I'm going to die. And there's a higher order for that. Yes. So I think what you're talking about is the same thing. I listened to what you're talking about, and I completely there's two types of people, right? Like you listen to that and I think, man, if I got an opportunity to do that for the rest of my life, I'd be more than happy. If you asked me to say, hey, would you do the same thing with golf every day for the rest of your life? I would say, fuck no.
Yeah. I don't want to do it for one day.
Yeah. I don't like to golf. And there's people that I know, like Jamal Charles, he's our daughters are friends. They play basketball. He plays golf every single day, 5-6 days a week. He goes and plays golf, and he's like, hey, do you want to play golf? I'm like, no. Not at all. I was like, if I got free time, I mean, like you basically, he just gets up and he plays golf. I'm like, I still work a job. But if I did not have this job and I was just able to go do whatever I want, it would probably be like, I would do this every single day. And then when I wasn't doing it, we would probably just go home and build crazy shit to be able to drive, fucking get shit like that.
Yes. And that's kind of what I realized, like, wow, lifting heavy weights is really fun. Competing with high stakes is fun. Kicking your ass in the mountains, going like when all of your senses are super turned on, trying to hear every little crack and stick and all this little, and you're walking through and you have this little bow in your hand. And I'm like, all that matters on earth right now is finding this animal. And if everything goes well and I do my job that I've prepared hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours for, if I get that chance, I could potentially put an arrow in the bull of a lifetime. That they were telling me that that's one of the biggest bulls that have ever been, if you killed it, that have ever been on this ranch. And like,
so you were in the thicket, right?
Yeah.
You heard a bugle. Like, like, what was the, like, I mean, you're moving towards it and then it just goes south. Like, I mean, what's the,
Yeah, so he's moving, and I could hear him as he's moving through. Like the sound is, echoing through the thicket, and it was almost kind of like one of those Vietnam movies, because everything got really dark, and it was towards the end of it was like an hour before dark, so everything in the thicket was dark. So you kind of walking into this dark thicket, which is kind of like ominous in itself. But it's, you're not afraid of an elk, but you have this weird like tingle in your spine. You're like I'm hunting this apex. No, he's not a predator, but he's the apex dude, like no sweat. Like he's the king. And now you're in this chess match and you're listening to like, what direction does it sound like his head is facing when he's belting off? And like, is he closer, or is his sound coming off of that hill and all this stuff? So anyway, I was working into him, and then he just kind of shut off, and I'm like, okay, is he 40 yards from me and I just can't see him? Is he watching me? Is he looking for, like, what's the whole thing? And then I talked to my guides after that, and they were watching from a couple hundred yards out, and they said he basically just slipped up this hill and just silently exited the scene, stage right. And he just decided at some point that either he was had enough and he wasn't falling for the cows, mewing at him anymore, or he just had that weird sixth sense to, like, his spidey sense was telling him that, like, I need to get out of here, and I don't need to make a big deal about getting out of here. I just need to get out of here. 800-pound animal with knives on his head. And he's just like, I'm out. And he just turns into a ghost.
A bull of that age, though, I mean, he has to have something innate within him to allow him to be able to survive that long.
Exactly. He just gets it. It's just, I need to go, and I need to go now. And I'm not going to tell. I'm Irish goodbye champion of the world, right? Like he's popping smoke and he's gone. And then so my guides were like, "Yeah, we watched him from 300 yards away. Like, we thought you were right on top of him, and we watched him work over this hill. And we hightailed it to that top of the next ridge to look for him. And just like every movie, like, the villain's gone. Like, he Kaiser Soze the whole thing. And and my buddy who had brought me up there, and he was telling me, he's like, dude. He's like, go to that section tomorrow and just run as fast as you can through the ranch until you hear his bugle. He's like, you could hear it above everyone, and you'll know that bugle. And I was like, oh, I know his bugle. He goes, screw every other bull. He's like, anything you hear, don't worry about it. He goes, until you hear that big sucker bellow, and then go after him and try to kill him. I was like, what are the chances of that working? He's like, oh, almost no chance. He's like, he goes, but if you want to do something truly amazing, he's like, you have to forego all other really good opportunities. And which I love the mindset of that, right? If you want to win the Super Bowl, you need to, like, not do any of this other fun stuff in life if this is what you're going after. And so, like, just those stakes, right? Like, just those stakes, and just that, like, I might be hunting the smartest bull in 100 square mile area. I don't know. Like, maybe he's dumb. Maybe he screws up. But then when they were like, oh yeah, so-and-so's come here to try to kill him. So-and-so, like, all these people, like, dudes you've heard of. And I'm like, man, they didn't get the job done on this guy. Like, I feel blessed that I just shared space with him, And so off channel, I'll text you the video they took of that bull this summer, and he's a freaking dinosaur.
I can't wait to see it.
And so it's just like, but man, it's just when it opens up your mind to that type of thing. I don't know, man, it gets pretty addictive. And then of course, while you're doing it, you're like, man, I should have trained altitude sprints more. Could I have closed distance faster? Could I, and so, like, now in my binocular case, it's on my chest rig, we kept, every time we were there, the guide would like, hey man, I see that bull over there. You got to get moving right now. And I remember, like, trucking, but you're at altitude, you got to pack, you've been doing this. And I remember starting to get worn out and get tired. And then, so inside my thing, when I flip up my binocular case, it just says, get moving. Like, it's kind of reminding me, like, hey man, you being out of shape or slow right now is not helping your eventual story you're trying to create right now. Like, screw all that stuff. You got to get moving. And so it's just a good reminder for me when I don't want to do high interval cardio or anything like that. It's like, yeah, but next time you get that chance. Actually, it reminded me 5, 6, 7 years ago, I went over to Cameron Haynes's, and we climbed that Pisgah Mountain, that little run that he does. And, I'd just come from no altitude. I was like 260 pounds. So I was like training hard, big, strong, whatever. I wasn't doing a lot of cardio, right?
How much you weigh now?
What's that?
How much you weighing now?
240, 242, somewhere in there. So we were booking it up this mountain. Then of course, like I start hurting pretty bad. And it was like 1.5 miles, but it was it's a pretty steep incline. It's like 1,500 feet elevation. I think Cam's doing it in like 13 or 15 minutes or some nonsense. So he gets up to the top and then comes back down, and I'm like walking. I can't run anymore. And he and I are talking. He's like, yeah, everyone wonders why I try to run a marathon so often and do this run every day during lunch. And I never forget, we're walking. He goes, hey, if we crest that if we come around that corner and a bull of a lifetime's at 70 yards, could you make that shot right now? And I was like, no, probably not. And he goes, that's why I do this every day. And I'm like,
but isn't he tiny? Isn't he like a wee little man? Isn't he like 5'8"?
He is relative. I mean, he's a lot smaller than me. Like, I'm a relatively big dude. But that just stuck in my mind, because then I experienced it 5 or 6 years later. And then I'm kicking myself going, yeah, but if I could have closed that 500 yards 30% faster, and when I got there, if I wouldn't have had to rest for a second before I got into that thicket to go in the stalk, like, would that 80 yards have been 50? And would that have been the chance of a lifetime? And then that haunts you, right? And then that's the I will train the best of my ability to not have that happen again. And so that's a driver, right? Like, you and I are both visionaries and dreamers. And then I put these audacious goals out there, and then it's maybe we watch too many 80s movies, but you kind of just go, okay, how am I going to do the work right now? So if I ever get the chance, that winning is a possibility.
On a hilarious note, you'll appreciate this. Matt Vincent's a big Burning Man guy.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So he always, when like he and Bonnie go to Burning Man, it's like this big deal. They have all these costumes, and it's like kind of like one of their like meccas, and they go with all their friends. So he sends me pictures, and the only thing I'm obsessed with Burning Man about is the mutant vehicles.
Oh, right. Yeah. Straight out of,
well, you can apply to get
Max.
what's called like a mutant vehicle permit. And then you have to like send in drawings, and they basically give you a permit, and you get to bring these crazy vehicles.
No way.
And so Matt, like whenever, like, I have no interest to go to Burning Man for, the fact that it's like, I mean, obviously the music's cool and the sightseeing and the people, but like, I'm not going there to fucking do Molly and take a bunch of drugs and, go out and dance in the desert.
Yeah. Your orgy days are past you, John.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe they could be. I don't know.
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I could probably reboot that time in my life. I mean, but I'm obsessed with the vehicles.
Yeah.
And so when Matt was, man, you should go, I'm like, the only way I'm going is if we find a way to build an insane vehicle. And this requires Johnny, Sornex, and then me. And then we're going to show up, and like, if we could build the most insane vehicle, because I don't know if you've seen it, like they have pirate ships on wheels, they have spaceships. Like this guy, like there's an entire book that I bought that's all the vehicles of Burning Man, and these guys spent like years building these insane vehicles. And I'm like, okay, that is something I'm in for. I'm not going there for this like weird kind of, I don't know, like dancing in the desert. Like, if there's something to build and we can show up with something that like tests the time. I mean, like I said, I went on that Unreal Adventure tour or trip with my truck, and I spent 3 years building this truck, and it was painted and nice, and we had to drag it over rocks, and people are like, I can't believe you did it. I'm like, well, like, it's kind of like my body.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you build this thing, you have to build it to break, and you have to go out and test it.
Yeah.
Like,
you got to run it.
Yeah. And like, if you build something and you're afraid to use it, then like, what the fuck good is it? It's useless. Like, I mean, like
Exactly.
you put yourself in, like you put yourself in that situation. Did you execute and like kill the bull that you wanted? No, but like, this is what spurs you to do it. I mean, the one thing I'm always impressed with all of you guys, with you and Cameron Haynes, I'm always amazed at the distance at which you guys can accurately shoot your bows. Like I'm good. Like, outside of 30, like, so 30 yards, even maybe 40, anything outside of that. And obviously playing in the NFL, I'm pretty fucking good at judging distance. Like, I know what 40 yards is. I know what 50
you're pretty
yards
decent
is.
athlete.
Oh yeah. Well, no, I mean, just the fact that I've stood on the 20-yard line, and I know exactly how far we need to get it. And
Right.
I've run enough hundreds and 110s and 50s that like, I'm almost like a circus guy, like guessing. Well, I'm good at that too. I can guess weight better than anybody because you have to size dudes up. You know, so that guy was 300
weight
pounds
and short distances and anything you can throw a hammer to. I'm really good at deciding that distance.
Well, like in the NFL, they come in, they do a scouting report. This guy's 300 pounds, and you show up and you're like, that motherfucker's not 300 pounds.
No.
Like
278.
I was in my second year, and we went to go play Buffalo, and they had Ted Washington listed at 340 in the program. And when I showed up, they got the 3 and the 4 mixed up. He was 430. And I remember looking at him like, dude, there's no way that dude's 340, because like there were dudes that were like 350 pounds and he was way bigger than them. So you get pretty good at judging this stuff.
Yeah.
But like I'm always amazed when I watch you guys shoot on video, that like one with the accuracy and just like the relaxation and the accuracy, but it's probably just the opportunity to shoot at that distance. And it's one thing to shoot at targets at that distance. It's another thing to shoot something that might move at any moment, to be able to accurately be able to, with confidence, and to get enough, energy per square inch off of that arrow and the placement. I mean, it's such an incredible, shooting a gun is one thing, but shooting an arrow at that distance is completely next level.
It is. And I will say, I appreciate that. I will say, I wouldn't highly suggest shooting super far distances at animals. We train, that 60, 70, 80 yards, whatever, to make the 40-yard shot like a chip shot, right? Like you always try to train harder and heavier and everything than you're actually going to compete. That being said, had that bull, that has a lung that big, if he had turned, and he did briefly turn, but it was to swap ends, at 67, and I was able to like feel like I was locked in on the shot, I'd have touched one off, but there's, I think Cam killed a bull. Like he put a second shot on one. It was like 101 yards, something along those lines. And you look at it, there's a different level with the John Dudleys, and the Cam is obviously great. The Levi Morgan, like those are some dudes that could shoot. Like I could shoot compared to normal dudes. There's some dudes that could really shoot. But I've also found the shortest I shoot at home is about 50 to 55 yards. That's kind of my starter. But then, the majority of stuff I shoot in the woods is, I think the last few bucks I've killed 21 yards, 7 yards, 14 yards, 31 yards, 27 yards. So like those shots almost feel like you're shooting at a wall, because they're just like, oh my gosh, I have all this stuff, And so, again, it's training, right? It's what we learned in training. You'd make it really, really hard. So when the test comes, that you have the highest probability of passing. So, but yeah, I've only killed 2 bulls with a bow. One was at 60 and one was at 6. So 6 yards, by the way, is wild.
Oh yeah. At that point you're like, it's so close, I'm going to miss.
Yeah. He was frontal screaming, just like that, tucked back and everything. And I literally, a bull has like, that dark brown, and then they go into the tan. And I remember I was at full draw and he walked in from 44 yards and he was kind of 1/4 so his shoulder was covered, and he kept getting closer and closer and closer. And then like at 10, he just stopped for a minute and I was already at full draw. And I remember thinking, I was like, I'm glad I'm strong, because I could just hold this. And I practice sometimes holding for like 2 minutes before I'll shoot, just kind of like getting that muscle memory and try to like stress every situation, And I remember holding it and thinking like, it's checkmate. Like unless you stay for minutes, like I got you. And he came in and got to 6 yards and then just turned straight toward me and just ripped off a bugle. And I looked and all my pins on my bow are in the brown on his neck. And I'm like, I could screw this up by a foot and I'm still in it, And I just remembered like sitting there looking down his face and just going checkmate. And I was just like, all I have to do is pressure this trigger a little bit and it's a done deal. And I just think, and he went 40 yards and just piled up. And it was awesome. Like that was one of those like, oh my gosh, you just live for this excitement and this preparation and all this stuff, And so, funny, you train at 70 yards all day long and then you shoot one at 6. Like,
were you in a ground blind or?
No, we were sneaking up. We saw a bull from about 400 yards off, and he was a big growler and just and doing his thing. And so we bombed it down this hill and fired back up the next side of it. And I was like, almost kind of giving out. Like it was like I was I was sucking wind pretty hard, and we just got to the clearing, and this big bull was working up into this clearing, into the woods, like with these cows. And he was like definitely the target guy we were looking for. And then, but it was the last morning, and I'd already told my guide, I was like, he's there like just to kind of tell you, like, is this bull old enough kind of thing. And I said, hey, if we see a really big mature bull, I don't care what his antlers look like as long as he's old enough, today's the last day. So anyway, so the biggest one, our target bull, runs off. And then right then we hear like two bulls just rip off beside us. And so this guy came out, and I was just kind of hiding behind this little aspen tree, and and I'm thinking he's going to come in front of me at 44 yards. It's a done deal. And then he just keeps working in closer and closer and closer. This guy's going to run me over. So I was just basically standing behind a tree, and I think at 6 yards he finally like ripped that bugle and looked at me like, what the heck are you? Like, why are you standing there? And I was just being perfectly, and I'm just looking at him like, oh shit. But unless he wheeled at that point, it was kind of a done deal. It was in the mail, but it was. I mean, dude, you have to do it. It's so. It'll draw you up, man. It's so wild.
When I hunted, my buddy has a big property in California. I think he's got like 18,000 acres, and we hunted those Thule elk.
Yeah,
and we chased those things through the mountains, like rolling mountains. I mean, obviously, like no coverage. We chased those things for 3 days through the mountains on foot, and I couldn't get within a quarter mile of those things.
They're so smart.
Dude, we would run this way for like 30 minutes to the point where I was like picking myself off the ground, and then they would be like 2 miles this way. I mean, it was insane. And then on the morning of the fourth day, the guys were like, dude, like, we're not going to get close with a bow. And so we ended up pulling out the 300 Win Mag, and I ended up killing a nice one.
Good.
But the interesting thing is I've never killed anything big with a bow. I've shot turkeys. I've shot small deer. I've never shot anything of like big value. I've never even taken like a big buck.
Sure.
So one of my goals is to be able to actually take something of note worth, like of picture worth, not just something where I'm like trying to get rid of it. Like I've shot like,
this is sausage.
Yeah, well, that's what we do with the does. I mean, I think for my wildlife, we have to take like 5 does.
Good.
So we got to knock them down. So I shoot them with a bow, but then they're little. We drag them in, and I clean them and take them to the processor, and then we eat deer sausage, and I basically take like the venison and mix it with ground beef. And like my wife, it was funny. We ate the last of the deer sausage, and she was like, we're out of because she takes it and puts it in with tomato sauce, and then like makes it for the kids with spaghetti.
Oh yeah,
and
it's the best.
That's like. Yeah, that's like, so she's like, we just went through the last package, and I'm like, all right. She's like, you're going to kill some more of these things. I'm like, of course.
Yeah.
Easy.
Isn't that the
easy,
best?
Charlie Manson.
Isn't it the best thing in the world? Like when my wife's like, hey, we're running kind of low. Like, oh man, I got to go hunting. And she's like, you're right. Cause you never get to go. Like, well, hun, like, I'll help you out here. And then you feel kind of stupid because if you're actually hunting big deer, you're passing up a lot of little ones, and you come home. She's like, did you get anything? I'm like, well, and she's like, okay, we eat these things too. Like, you don't have to wait for this monster to come through. And then it's usually like the last week of the season, I just go on like a spree, and I'm killing like 1 or 2 a day. I'm just bringing them back. And then I'd say, how many do we need? She's like, we need 3 deer for the freezers. And it's just go. And then, which is fun, but, but it's nice when you get cleared hot from the wife to go out there and grocery shop.
Yeah, I mean, I had a pretty good buck that I shot last year, but sure enough, it was one of those deals where I went out and I hunted, had my bow, the whole deal, and then all of a sudden I'm like, go into the backyard, like to get like, actually I was sitting at the kitchen table, and I look out the back, and I'm like, so I literally ran out there, had the gun on the tripod, knocked him down, and I was like, I sat out there in my blind, I've didn't see him, and the minute
so
I'm just
smart.
Well, and they don't come at times. Like normally, like they know when the feeders go off. They don't come at that time. And then all of a sudden you see them strolling through like the creek at like 2 PM, and you're like, what the fuck are you doing? There's no does around. They're just out there scared.
Because when's the last time you hunted at 2 PM?
Yeah.
Yeah, the big deer pattern people faster than we patterned them. That is what all the big deer killers that I know, they all say the same thing. And I've noticed the big deer that I got the last part of last year, I had to do something totally different in order to kill him, because I started realizing, regardless of how many times I saw him in a row, if he was daylighting, I'm like, first day he's there at 5:30, second day 5:45. I'm like, third day he's dead, right? Like, no question to ask. Wind is perfect. You're gone. Like, you're patterning. And every time I would sit for him, he not only wouldn't show up that day, he wouldn't show up on any camera on my entire farm, and he wouldn't show up for a week. So I'm like, okay, I don't have to see this pattern too many times to start realizing like I am intruding and he's figuring me out more than I'm figuring him out. So the day I actually killed him, it was the last day of the season. It was a torrential downpour. So I said, well, he's going to be in his bed because they're going to bed in the rain. And it's raining hard enough that he'll probably be hunkered down. His head will be down. He won't be watching wherever I'm walking in or whatever road I'm walking in on, or if he hears the side-by-side, he's figured out what all that means. So I parked like a half mile further away, and I circumvented my entire property in a torrential downpour to stay away from the thicket, to stay away from everything. And I slipped up in the stand, and I just gambled. I was like, if that rain stops, he's going to get up and shake it off, and he's going to go try to get something to eat. And like 30 minutes before it got dark on the last day, the rain stopped. I'm like, oh, we got a chance. And about 10 minutes with the season left, I'm like, well, he won the game this year. That's that. Like, you know, and I saw something flash in front of me just a little in the thicket. And I put up my binoculars, and it was him standing up out of his bed. He had been 40 yards away in a thicket the entire time. And I think he was exactly right. I thought he was betting further away, but what I realized was he watched me walk into that stand every time, and he just wouldn't stand up. Like, he just understood he was safe. And because his head was down, it was the rain, and I'd slipped in a totally different direction, I just happened to get in there on him, and he shook. And I had my binoculars in his big rack, and he was just shaking all the water off his rack and just stood up. And I'm like, checkmate. Oh my gosh, this actually worked. And I was more excited about that one. He's a good South Carolina whitetail, probably as much as I was in my Cape Buffalo in Africa. Like, it was just the chess game that we had for 2 years. And I mean, I lost more sleep over that one stupid deer. And my family all knew who he was. I call him Touch because his main beams would come around almost touch. My family's like, are you looking at Touch again? I'm like, I'm trying to figure this deer out. And it was like this weird chess game between me and this stupid 5-year-old whitetail. I put more effort into that than probably much more than I should have. But the game was fun. And then there was remorse. Like, you get him and you're super happy, but you're like, oh man, like I was starting to really like this chess game we had going on. I was really enjoying it. You know, it's almost like at the end of First Blood when Teasdale and you know, Rambo basically dies and everything, and he's like, man, and he even says in the book, he's like, I loved that kid. And you're like, oh, you've been trying to kill him for 3 days, but like, oh, but you've gotten this weird relationship now, and then you go in this, like, it sounds weird, but this almost like hangover for a few days, like the game's over. There's like this remorse that like, all right, well, I miss it now.
Well, they messed up from the book to the movie in that Brian Dennehy was so unlikable as the sheriff that if they had actually kind of made this kind of like weird friction, like the way the book was done, I don't think that they had the time to develop the character. And the thing they do in movies is they make characters so polarizing because they realize they have such a short, they don't have a long story arc.
Yeah. So like little kids could watch it basically and see who the bad guy is. Every movie I watch when my kids are like, is he bad? And I'm like, well, you know. And then you kind of go back and forth. I'm like, in real life, there's no really bad guy and no good guy. It's like everyone's kind of on the grayscale.
Well, I mean, you know, like such a classic, you know, anti-hero movie. But if you go back and you look at like that whole genre of movie, I mean, you think about like The Dirty Dozen and, you know, all the Clint Eastwood, you know, all those movies. I mean, that was really that like anti-hero deal, and it just kind of moved forward. But I'm kind of like amazed now that like Rambo First Blood was the first action hero movie, because then the next one, I mean, no, like that's a good point. Like that's something I'm going to have to go research a little bit, just because I feel like I'm not as educated as I should be on that. I mean, because you think about it, you know, you got Stallone and you got Arnold.
Yeah, those are. I mean, they're the genesis of all of it.
Yeah, and then Van Damme, I think, fits in there. You probably Dolph Lundgren fits in there. Sure. I mean, I'm just thinking who else would be in that Mount Rushmore?
Yeah, I mean, you could kind of call a Charles Bronson or a, you know, I mean, really a Bruce Lee is probably one of really the first, but probably based on some other situations, he wouldn't be like credited with it. But from the action hero standpoint, like especially when like the muscles and but you know, Bronson was pretty jacked. You know, but from what I understand, I think it's like what they mean by the action hero is not only like the body guy, whatever, but almost like crazy, unbelievable feats of athletic prowess and strength tied into it. Like, Clint Eastwood and Dirty Harry never did anything unbelievable, and so I think when you start adding that aspect into it, like making a true almost superhero, but an action superhero, that had to be Arnold and Stallone. And I guess if you look at 82, that would have been Stallone. I don't think Arnold had any movies prior to that. Terminator was 83, 84. And then, you got Predator right after that and those type of movies. But, so anyway, I don't know if really Conan the Barbarian could be put into that aspect.
Yeah, man,
doesn't really feel action hero though, right?
Like, define an action hero. Like right. What kind of movie? Like it would have to be. It's got to be something with guns. It's got to be things, lots of explosions.
Yeah. So there you go. First Blood.
Yeah, it'd be like First Blood, and then like maybe like Commando.
Yeah.
When did Commando come out? Hold on.
85, I think. So I think it was like Commando, missing an First Blood Part 2. Rambo was in 85.
Yeah.
I mean, you had a lot of that was in my opinion, the peak. That was the high water mark of that genre.
Well, it's all been downhill since 1985. And I think yeah, for us.
We've gone deep water in that conversation years and years ago.
Well, we have, but I mean, if you think about
but just in general in life, I would agree.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really think of, a like a good movie that I've seen lately that kind of fits into any of these genres where I would be like, oh, I have to go see that movie immediately,
Yeah.
Whereas like the Terminal List stuff came out, like the new kind of like the prequel for the Terminal List, which I thought was
Dark Wolf.
Dude, yeah.
Is it good? So good? I haven't watched it yet.
Oh, you haven't watched it?
No.
The guy that I like is the African guy,
Rafe?
The Rhodesian. Yeah, Rafe.
Yeah.
And like reading the books, especially where he ends up going back to Africa and kind of like works for those guys. Like I forgot which book that was. Was
Savage Son, maybe? I can't remember.
Savage Son. Yeah, those stories of like the Rhodesians and that in Africa and like the hunting and all that. Like I thought that was the best part.
So good.
Like that. I actually wanted them to make that movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Savage Son was somewhat based off of The Most Dangerous Game. The book was with General Zaroff and Rainsford and everyone. That was kind of, and that's what Jack was talking about. That basically he read that book and he read First Blood as a kid and told himself at that point, I will eventually write a book that is modeled off of these. Like at 10 years old, he decided that.
Oh, he decided to be an author at that point. He's like, I'm going to.
Yeah, he knew even going into the SEAL teams, he's like, I'll do the SEAL team thing and I'll eventually get out and be an author. This is what I want to do.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I don't know, I mean, I don't share too much, but Jack's two sons are named Reese and Rafe.
Nice.
Yeah. It's pretty awesome. So.
Well, yeah, that's, but I just watched that Dark Wolf and it was good. It was,
and actually his one son who's named Reese is severely handicapped. And that's why he named the character Reese, because he wanted to make the character all the things that his son would never be able to do, like the ultimate dude. Which I think is just like, as a dad, you're like, oh,
Yeah. No, it's, like having kids with special needs, man. Like that's, like we, it's always something like, for like, Cash, who's type 1, like for example, Victor Hugo, one of the JITS guys I trained, he got married on Saturday. And so we went to the wedding. It was like 5 o'clock, no kids, which is kind of a pain in the ass when they don't let you bring your kids to weddings. Then you got a babysitter. But then the problem is that we have to have specific babysitters that are like used to like, be able to manage this. It's not like I can just hire some like, 13-year-old girl from the neighborhood, even though my daughters are 14, which I think is hilarious. I'm like, how come they're not babysitting?
Wait, what are we doing?
Yeah.
We're hiring your friends?
Yeah, because they're probably like, fuck this little guy. And but yeah, so I mean, there's always like a different element, and then all of a sudden it's like 8:45, and this thing's kind of like peeling up, and I could see my wife looking at her phone, and she's like, "We've been gone 4 hours, we got to get back." And these people, I'm like, God damn. So it definitely adds a different element to your life that you wouldn't necessarily, if it didn't happen, you wouldn't ordinarily think about.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought you would appreciate that little tidbit of information. Which I always thought that was a beautiful thing that he named the character after his son, like for the alter ego.
Yeah. I mean, it's, like the interesting thing about kids, and I kind of like think about, when you hear things like this is like, no child asked to come into this world.
Yeah.
If you think about it, you get married, let's say, you have kids with your wife, like you make some conscious decision to bring these individuals into your life.
Sure.
And like, once they're there, like as a parent, you have a responsibility to raise these children.
Yeah.
And I always have to kind of remember that like, they didn't ask to be here. And it's not like they, propositioned me for this. And I'm like, we got in this thing together. Like these kids. And so it's your responsibility as a father, as an individual, to shepherd them across whatever that looks like, or whatever that works. And I think so many people skirt that responsibility. And unfortunately, I don't know if they look at it that same way.
Yeah. And it's the biggest responsibility, right? It's the hopefully the things, one of the only things that are going to outlast you and, be the mark of who you were as a person. What are you leaving behind, right? It might be a company. It might be cool trophies. It might be all these other things, but like to leave like living monuments and living, evidence of who you were that could then how they create their life after that was heavily with the seeds that you planted and fertilized within them, and figuratively and literally. Man, like is there a more important task? I don't believe so.
No, I feel like there's two major milestones for a man. And it's funny. I just actually gave this bit of sage advice to a buddy of mine who's weird deal. Dad was super healthy, goes into COVID, gets vaccinated, gets a booster, ends up getting a bunch of blood clotting issues. So he's having all these clotting issues. So they put him on all these anti-clotting deal. Yeah. They ended up messing up his blood sugar. So he gets type 2 diabetes, and they're trying to manage the type 2. And this ends up going in, and they are trying to do stints, and basically they take his leg. So he ends up losing a leg. And so, my buddy's texted me, and he's like, they just took my dad's leg. He's probably not going to make it. And kind of like hit me up a little bit about it. And I told him, I'm like, there's two major, at least in my observation, there's two major things for a man. The day that, one, you father a child, and specifically have a son, which is different. Like I know you got sons and daughters like I do. Having a daughter is one thing. Having a son is kind of a little bit different. Yeah. And I wouldn't have thought that unless I'd had one of each. It's just a completely different interaction. But the other one is losing your father and then realizing that no longer can you pick up the phone and call your dad, and the realization that one day your son is going to be in the exact same situation.
It's wild. And I know both of us have probably been going through that exact process in our mind, especially, I lost Pops a year and a half ago, but I spread his final spot of his ashes this past weekend. Or this past week when I was up in New Jersey. That's one of the places he wanted it at his dad's grave, which I hadn't been to in 20-something years. And, I knew he'd asked me to do that a couple different places. And, and I'll be honest, the last year and a half has been super hard, metabolizing that. I'm sure you had to metabolize it as well, right? And at first, for those who've, lost their dads or their families, like, I'm sure you'd probably know what I mean, but like that first, the shock, and then it's the sadness. And then I tried to process it as much as I could, but at some point I realized that I had put up walls and tried to just protect my own sanity and emotions, and kind of go through the motions in the last year. And you mix it in with work and, pleasure and, cool hunts and whatever. But there's always like this kind of, I want to say sadness that just kind of sits in there, and the realization, there's a lot of times I realize like, you're right. Like I don't get to walk into his office and talk to him anymore. I don't have him come flop down on my couch, even at the most inopportune times at work, and tell me about something that I thought was inconsequential or maybe even like silly that day. Thankfully enough, during those times, I realized there was one day that I wouldn't be able to do that. And I try to take those times for what they were worth. But when you start realizing, like, literally for the rest of my life, that experience will never happen again. It's not like this year, he didn't go out of town. He's not on vacation. He's not sick in the hospital. It's just never again, you know, and I know you and your dad talked a lot. I mean, I know that just by, well, the things you've told me, he told you, and like, I'm sure there's dinner conversations, and, you know, he did such a great job, like mentoring you and your intelligence level and everything. Like, you're so worldly. And like, so that obviously comes at a very high price of time. And so you come to the realization, like, I don't ever get that again, like ever. Like, I'm going to be hopefully an old man one day. And what I'm living right now is just the early days of being without Pops. I'll go for more, maybe hopefully more decades, but this is like the freshest it's ever going to be. So I realized over the last year, I'd kind of put that away in a little box and kind of slid under the bed, you know, figuratively, and just tried to like keep going. But then, you know, so anyway, kind of fast forwarding, I knew one of his places he wanted, 4 or 5 places he wanted his ashes spread. And I've done all of it. And then the last one was, his dad's grave in Jersey. I'm like, when's the next time I'm going to Newark, New Jersey? And so I was driving up to do some deer hunting last week in Rochester and visit some clients on the way there. And I'm like, I'll go right through Newark. I said, and then that kind of hits you like, do I want to ride this ride right now? Like, it's an obligation I have that I told him I would do it. But that means tomorrow I'm leaving and I'm packing up his ashes in my truck with me while I'm going to do all these other things. And I'm going to find time to go do that. And selfishly, I don't want to be in this right now. This isn't a ride I want to ride. This isn't an experience I want tomorrow. Like, so I'm visiting with some clients on the way up and saw my friend, Jim Curtsy over there at Naval Academy. And then I get out of that meeting, I get in the truck and I'm like looking at my schedule. I go, oh, I have about 3 hours and I got to go to Newark. And okay, I know I'm going there. But the night before I was packing and I was getting his ashes. And then I was like, gosh, where was that cemetery? And I looked in his like file of important papers. And there was a file that said, cemetery directions. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I open it. And it's a note that says, Bert. And he said, I want to be put at the right hand of my dad. And love, Pop. And I open it, and it's aerial views. It's pictures from the street with Post-it notes of a total map to how to get this mission accomplished. And
God damn it.
And I thought about it, and I was like, the intent, and he was always so intentional. I was like, yeah. The intent that he had, because when did he write that map? 20 years ago? Like, he just, the intent to look at your own mortality and write a note to your son, realizing that he'll read that note when you're gone. And I opened it and just broke down. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you set me up for success so well that you knew that you had to like visit this very unpleasant thought that you're writing a note to your son. In this space mentally and emotionally that I'd be in reading this, but you still did it. And you left it in your file of important papers. And he told me one time, he's like, I know it's going to be hard when I go, but I'm going to try to make it as easy as possible for you logistically. And just, you look and you're like, oh man, you poured into me and you mentored me my whole life. And even a year and a half after, like, you're still trying to help, you know?
Yeah.
So, that was my experience last week.
Man, thank you for sharing that.
Sorry.
Dude, I loved your dad. Your dad and I had such a special relationship, and I wish I got to hang with him more. But my favorite, like, I have so many favorite pop stories, but like I'm sad that I didn't meet him earlier in my life. I met him,
y'all would have got along
as an adult.
He always was interested in you. He always liked. He enjoyed that you were smart enough to get his idiosyncrasies, and he very much.
Well, I'm highly observant, and your dad would do things like there's people that do things, they want to know people do things. There's people that do things hoping that somebody else notices that of value. And I always noticed like all of like the small things with your dad and just like the mannerisms. I mean, like my favorite interaction was probably the last one that I had with him was when he came over and he told me that story that I was in his dream, and that he had this dream and that we were in a bar and we were having drinks and we basically put our backs and we basically beat everybody up. And he's telling me that this whole story that I'm in his dream, and then he like kind of like looks at me, pauses, and just like walks away. And so I went over and I forgot who it was. A couple of guys came over like, what was Pops talking to you about? And I told him the story, and I was like, figured he tells everybody this story. I was like, has Pops ever told you that he got into that you were in his dream and the guys got into a bar fight and you cleared house? They're like, no, never heard this one. So, but no, he, the hats in this. But I think what's just so interesting, and I like, your dad had you. Right, like you were his only son, and he poured everything into you. I'm one of 6. So my dad was married, before my mom, had 3 kids, and then got divorced, met my mom, and, had 3 more. And so I feel like my dad, obviously, like having multiple children, kind of investing this and living your life and doing all these things. Whereas I feel like, the fact that you and your dad were such good friends, because not only did you work together, but like, dude, you were his son. And that's an interesting piece of like feeling like I was, one of my dad's many children. Mm-hmm. And I was the youngest. And, I remember at a young age when they told me I was mistaken, that nobody wanted me. And I was always like, Mom, I know exactly where I'm here. So it's funny now. I'll talk to my brother. My brother Ed and I talk about like some of like, my dad's shortcomings or things that were surprised. Like one of the ones was that, my brother is, probably one of the top criminal defense attorneys in California, right? His firm is probably the best one in California. Wow. I mean, he's absolute killer. And he did the exact same job with that my dad did, and they were never in practice. And he kind of always thought that my dad would be like, hey, like, let's link up our wagons. And my dad never did. Oh. And so we were kind of talking about that. And he goes, how come Dad was so quick to push us out? Like, why was Dad so quick to like, not want to like, cause I think he sent me something where I think it was Andrew Tate, who I'm not a huge lover of by any means, but Andrew Tate and his brother had like, there was a clip that was like, hey, if I'm going to make it, I'm going to make it with my brother, that we're going to link our wagons. And as a family, we're going to do this. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of an interesting clip my brother sent me. And he goes, man, how come like Mom and Dad didn't do that more? How come Dad, like, he goes, I was a, criminal defense attorney, and I get out of the DA, I get into private practice. He goes, I was kind of always hoping my dad would call me and say, hey, like, you're ready, let's go. You and I, we're going to take on the world. And he goes, Dad never did that. And he goes, and he never really did that for you, and he never did it for them. And, kind of realizing that, was it like a, how he was raised, where like, you take your sons and you push them out and you hopefully that they can figure it the fuck out, and I don't know, it's kind of interesting. And I think, that was something that I always wanted. And my brothers and I have been shitty with that as well. My brother's a lawyer, my other brother does insurance in this, and then I do what I do. But there was never a point where it was like, hey, this is what our family business is. We're all going to link our wagons. Yeah. And the one thing, and I've told you this many times, the greatest thing you can do is honor not only your family, your father in this. And like, every time I go to Sorinix and I stand up there, and I've been very fortunate to speak at Sorinix on multiple occasions for Summer Strong, which I still reference a talk that I gave on authenticity. I use that all the time. Like I thought about that talk for years, and I was so happy you hit me up last minute because I wanted to give that. But, and you've heard me say it. I'm like, dude, the fact that you stand here in the house that your father built and have extended this business and done something far past whatever his vision was is by far the greatest blessing you could offer your family. And I'm so proud to be able to call you a friend and, support Sorinix and do everything we do for the fact that, not only is it the best equipment, I joke that my grandkids will be lifting on this shit. The fact that like that equipment has an inherent soul and ethos that I support and that I'm so proud to be a part of. And
Thanks,
I'm just glad that I got a chance to meet Pops and play a small part in it. I got a box from you, I think it was probably a couple weeks ago, of a bunch of his clothes.
Yeah.
And I put them on and went out and basically just went out and hung outside. I threw the stuff on, I kept it, and I put it in the closet and I'll in my in the garage, and I'll bust it out for when it gets cold or for the hunting stuff. But I appreciate the fact that you sent me something that I'll have of him, and I only got to see him as an older man. I would have, looking at those pictures and like talking to different people, I would have loved to have met Pops when I was in my early 20s and he was in his 40s, gone out and like fucking raised hell with him.
He would have poured so much into you because you were definitely, he poured into everyone, but he poured into those most who he thought had the capacity of understanding it and taking it and doing something with it. Like he would have poured into you so heavily because he would have seen you as like, oh, this one has the potential, right? And he did that with me, and he did that with a few of other people. And he took that, his mentorship and the investment of time that he had extremely seriously. Like I've seen him, write workouts for people, and then 2 or 3 weeks later he walks out in the gym and they're doing something different. And he'll ask him, he'll say, give me that workout, and he'll take it and he'll just tear it up and he'll throw it in the trash. And they're like, what? He goes, if you ask me to write your programming, you need to do my programming. If you don't, and they go, well, why? I was doing my own thing. He goes, right. And you're going to fail. And I don't want to be associated with your failure. So I don't want people thinking that I wrote your bullshit training because you're doing stupid shit. So give it back. That's my name. So I don't want to be associated with people that aren't succeeding. And I'm investing in you, and you choosing not to respect my investment, give it back. And I just like, wow. And people, they'd be in tears. Your dad took my workout. I'm like, he told you, he told you. But
I remember when I showed up and there was all the anvils, and we were going around, we were picking them up by the horns, and I could see your dad over there watching.
Oh man.
And I remember we started like picking up, like we got to like 174 and we started getting the big ones.
Big jowlets.
And the minute we picked up the one for 174, he came running over and he was like so excited. He's like, because basically he was so funny. He's like, these fucking little weak motherfuckers that are at this thing. And like that was his barometer. And when we picked it up, I left there and I did not own anvils. And then I came home, and this is kind of pre-marketplace. I jumped on Craigslist and I put in anvils, and there was a posting for a lady who was having an estate sale, and an anvil popped up. So I called her and she's like, oh yeah, we live on a ranch down in San Antonio. My husband was a blacksmith, and I have a bunch of his stuff, and we're going to have an estate sale. So I drove down and ended up picking up 2 of his anvils. And so I went into the shop and I like looked at them, and I went over and I kicked them over and I went to go pick them up. And she like started laughing. She's like, my husband and his buddies who were blacksmiths would have drinks, and that was one of their games, is who could pick up the anvils. And she's like, I haven't seen anybody do that in a long time. And she's like, that's how different blacksmiths would test their strength, which was a similar deal. So I ended up buying these 2 anvils, and I have them in the shop, and periodically I'll break them out, and it's a lot easier with chalk and with and without. But that was I see him as I walk in, I think of Pops.
This episode of Power Athlete Radio is powered by Train Heroic, the most immersive strength training app experience on the market. We've built an online training business by partnering with Train Heroic to deliver all of our world-class training programs like Jack Street, Hammer, Field Strong, and Grindstone. To learn which Power Athlete training program best suits your goals, head to powerathletehq.com/training. And if you're a coach looking to build a business with the best training tech in the business, head to trainheroic.com/powerathletehq. And now back to the show. Hey there, Power Athlete Nation. Big shout out to all the heavy hitters who stuck around till the final whistle. If you've been soaking in the knowledge bombs and epic tales we've been dropping for free, here's your chance to be a game changer. Swing by ko-fi.com/powerathlete and toss a few bucks our way to keep the podcast fueled and firing on all cylinders. That's ko-fi.com/powerathlete. Your support makes a difference. See ya.